Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Manufacturing South Carolina. We're up to episode number 17, if you are keeping score, and as always, I am your host, Rick Jenkins. Across the country, manufacturing extension partnerships, long viewed as a vital support system for small and mid-sized manufacturers, are entering a period of uncertainty as federal funding cuts start to take effect. For decades, MEPs have helped manufacturers modernize their operations, embrace new technologies, strengthen supply chains, and remain competitive in a global market. Here in South Carolina, our MEP has earned a reputation as one of the strongest in the nation. Still, its future, like many others, carries some unanswered questions. Joining us today to break down where things stand is Andy Carr. Andy is the CEO of SCMEP. Andy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Rick. It's good to be here.
It is good to have you, buddy. I haven't seen you in a while. You have joined the show before, but it has been a little while, so I appreciate you coming on. You know, Andy, I have always said that manufacturers in South Carolina do not have a better friend than your team over at SCMEP.
Thank you.
And you're welcome. Y'all do fantastic work, and that's why, Andy, that it perplexed me so much back in April when the announcement came down from the administration talking about that federal funding for the MEPs, and there are 51 MEPs.
Yes.
51 MEPs in the country, was going to be cut. The funding was temporarily restored, and I want you to tell us all about it, right? About 10 MEPs lost funding, and then it was temporarily restored, and now there's been all kinds of stuff to happen. So anyway, I want you to tell me all about that. However, I want to start with SCMEP. Give us that elevator speech. Tell us, everybody knows who you are, but just in case, tell the folks who you are and the services you provide.
All right, thank you. Well, we are a team of 21. Our headquarters is here in Greenville, but we have a presence all across the state. And our focus, along with the rest of the MEP program, is the small and medium-sized manufacturers. And that's a rough definition, any manufacturer with 500 employees or less. Yes, we work with the bigger ones, but our focus is on those. And if you know the demographics of manufacturing in South Carolina, in fact, in the U.S., Rick, I think it's about 78% of all manufacturers in South Carolina have 20 employees or less. 91% of manufacturers actually have 500 or less. So that is manufacturing in South Carolina. It's manufacturing in the U.S. And this program set up 35 years ago by Senator Fritz Hollings and Senator John Glenn. To this date, that's who we serve. That's our target market there. So that's to help them improve cost, quality, delivery, to improve safety, employee morale, you name it, the typical manufacturing problems, we have those solutions there. And, the thing for us, you think, well, how does 21 people do that for about 8,000 manufacturers across the state? We do with a large network of third-party providers. So we're a great connector. We help bring a lot of small independent contractors, consultants, and trainers together with the state's manufacturers and help bring those relationships together. So that's what we are. That's how we do it. And that's what we're passionate about.
Let's talk about the funding issue, Andy. And I hate that we have to have this conversation, but we do. And so just to recap a little bit, back in April, there were 10 MEPs that lost funding. And that came as a surprise to me. Did it come as a surprise to you?
It did, Rick. I will say that, there's been certain parties and certain elements out there for many, many years that have wanted to see the MEP be privatized and basically the federal funding be withdrawn from them. It's something that through all different administrations we've been around 30 years. We always pay attention. We expected it. But with the current administration's real focus on having it made in America, having it reshored, it was a real surprise on that one. The program that I think is uniquely equipped to help U.S. manufacturers is slated for elimination of funding in federal FY26.
Yeah, so let's go through that. Right now, everybody has funding. Is that correct? All the 51 MEPs right now have federal funding, and it is expiring at different times.
It is,
in the coming year.
Yeah, that is right, Rick. For South Carolina, our federal funding is in place through March 31st, 2026. There will be other centers whose federal funding expires at the same time. There will be other ones whose federal funding expires. It'll be June 30th next year, and then there'll be ones that expire September 30th. But I must say, some of those other ones currently, well, the funding is there. They are having a lot of difficulty accessing it, and that is causing a lot of cash flow problems for a lot of MEPs at the current point in time.
Yeah, the funding, I mean, for you, for SCMEP, we're looking at what, $2.5, $3 million?
Yeah, it's 2.7. Yeah.
2.7.
So it represents about a third of our budget.
Right. And, you know, a lot of MEPs, I would guess most MEPs are not as well off as we are here in South Carolina in terms of the percent of the pie that the federal funding makes up.
We've been very fortunate. I mean, we were one of the first 3 MEPs, so we've been at this a long time. We've built a lot of great relationships. We are very, very valued within the state of South Carolina, thanks to partners such as the South Carolina Department of Commerce, great MOUs with South Carolina Department of Employment and Workforce. We're well positioned. There are other MEPs where the federal funding is a much, much higher percentage of their budget. Again, it's about a third for us. And as you would expect, we're actively pursuing alternate funding sources to replace that when it goes away.
Let's talk about that. Where do you get your funding other than that federal piece of the funding?
So a large part of it is actually client revenue. It's actually the services
for services?
Paying for services, yeah. I mean, our assessments, and I know we've talked about the competitiveness review, things like that. Those are free, but most of the actual delivery, the training classes, the project delivery we do, there is fees associated with it. So yes, there's that. We do enjoy support from the state of South Carolina. That comes to us through the South Carolina Department of Commerce. Vast majority, it goes around to actually paying down the cost of our services for South Carolina manufacturers, a little bit actually to cover operations. So yeah, that's basically the 3 main legs on the stool there, Rick.
I've heard you say before that regardless if you do lose $2.7 million a year, that SCMEP is going to provide the same services that they've always provided. It's kind of hard to fathom, Andy.
Yeah, well, again, our model where we use a large amount of independent third-party contractors let us do that. They're not on the payroll. They earn when they deliver, so that works. We've done some cost cutting. It's been a very, very aggressive budget for us this year. We actually had a small layoff there at the end of May, I think it was. And there is a huge concentration on making sure that our costs are controlled and that we generate as much revenue as possible. Again, yes, that's a fair amount of money to lose. Is it a complete body blow, and does it result in SMEP shutting up shop or not being able to serve a certain part of the state? Absolutely not.
Right. One more thing on this, and then we'll move on to another topic, Andy. Look into that crystal ball. I know that it is possible that a decision is reversed and that the funding starts flowing again. That is possible.
Yes.
To what degree do you think that might be possible, and what's going to happen?
Well, what's that old adage there, Rick? It's hope for the best, plan for the worst.
Yeah.
I sincerely hope that happens, not just for SMEP, but for all those other centers in the MEP network. Having followed this very, very closely for on the last 6 or 9 months, I'm not optimistic. I'm really not. And again, we're planning for the worst, and that is the elimination of that federal funding on March 31st next year.
Well, I hate to hear it. So fingers will remain crossed until I get here for sure. And so good luck, the best of luck to you. Let's go on and move to another challenging situation, and that is the labor market, which is difficult. And I want this to be a lead into a conversation about upskilling, which is in the process, well, it has been extremely important for a long time, but is in the process of becoming more important than ever before because of some labor challenges that we're dealing with. Unemployment rate overall is at 4.3% in South Carolina. That's about the national average. It is stubborn, puts us about middle of the pack. I do not know what the unemployment rate is for the manufacturing sector alone, but I have a feeling that it is in that ballpark one way or the other. But layoffs have been occurring. Layoffs have been occurring across the state and in the manufacturing sector as well. Boeing has laid off. Proterra has laid off. Lockheed Martin has laid off, and a bunch of smaller operations Many of them have also laid off. So that brings me back to upskilling. Folks have, they can't find good folks always. They have got to upskill. They have got to train their people as good as they can to do as many different things as they can. What are you seeing out there?
Well, from SCMEP's point of view, yeah, we're seeing a general softness in the market. Our fiscal year begins in July, and this year has been, this, as we describe it internally, solid. Not spectacular, but just solid. What we're seeing, and I think we'll talk about it in a little bit, with the impact of tariffs, there is a lot of uncertainty and there's a lot of indecision in there. So what we see is commitments from people. They want to do projects, they want to send people to training, open enrollment classes, etc. And then something changes, and it's always they don't cancel. They pump the brakes ever so slightly, and they want to review it and maybe do it a month or 2 or 3 months later. So it's just a lot of hesitation, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of people guarding their cash, actually, Rick. That's what we're seeing at the moment.
Right. Let's come back to tariffs in a sec, but let's stick with upskilling. How does SCMEP assist in that regard?
Well, we always love to start with an assessment. We have a new, launched last year, workforce assessment, RX3. The R's actually come from, and I'm sure we've talked to you about this before, we're looking to position manufacturers as an employer of choice, with a place where people want to go to work, where you would send your spouse, you would send your children, you would send your partner, you send your uncle, whoever. You go, yeah, that's a really good place to work because they really look after people. The 3 R's, you're always talking about recruitment. You're talking about, once you've recruited people, retaining them. And then the third one is about your reputation in the marketplace. Is that a place where people go, yeah, that is a great place to work? You might want to think again about going there, unless you're really desperate. So a whole suite of services that we focus on there, from, I mentioned the RX3 assessment is a good starting place, to then, depending on what that assessment uncovers and unpacks, to help you structure solutions, whether they be training, projects, anything to actually help you overcome that and, boost your ability to recruit people,
Right.
to retain them once they're on board, and to make sure you've got a very, very positive reputation in the marketplace. And I think, Rick, for the upskilling thing there, and this is what I've heard, particularly for the younger generation, whether it's recruitment, and then once they're in the door, how are you going to invest in them? That's what people want to see. They've obviously got goals, they've got lifestyles that they want to attain. And that's a very, very reasonable part of the conversation as a prospective employee. What are you going to invest in me? How are you going to develop me? How are you going to make me more valuable, obviously, to the company that they're looking to join, but the labor marketplace in general? And companies that don't understand that, are not prepared to have those discussions. If you've got a better offer down the road, you're going to take it. So making sure they understand that, the impact, and making sure that, you can not only help your company grow, but you help these individuals grow.
Good stuff, Andy. I'm going to get you out here on this. I want to go back to tariffs for a second. I had Herb Dew sitting in your chair not too long ago, and a lot of folks in South Carolina know Herb. He is the CEO and founder of HTI, Human Technologies Incorporated, one of the largest workforce solutions firms in South Carolina. And we were talking about the impact that tariffs are having in the manufacturing world. And Herb said that what he is seeing is that manufacturers are just pausing. They're just stepping back for a minute to see what's going on. So that might mean that open positions that they have, they may not be disappearing. They may just be held open as we just kind of navigate this uncertain time. What are you seeing?
Very much the same thing there, Rick. What we're seeing, there are some winners out there. Some sectors of manufacturing, particularly some of the folks in the steelmaking that have benefited from it. There are others where it's kind of neutral. It hasn't really, really affected them. But there's a whole host where it has added a great degree of caution, that they're not sure. There's confusion. They don't understand the impact. They don't understand what it's going to do to their costs. And typically most manufacturers, they tend to be very conservative when they're faced with that situation. They tend to draw up the strings on the purse and just want to see what's going to happen. So I think we're definitely seeing an impact there. And I think that's why we're having a solid year rather than a spectacular year. But yes, confusion, concern, And then caution, I think, is the watchword that we're seeing right now.
Folks, that's Andy Carr. Andy, really good stuff. I appreciate you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rick.
Thanks, Andy, CEO, SCMEP. These are challenging times, folks, in the manufacturing industry, but something tells me that we're going to pull through just fine and look back a year from now, and it's going to be in our rearview mirror. And I certainly hope that that funding, some way, somehow, reappears, because if there is an organization in South Carolina that is deserving of that type of funding, it is yours. Andy Carr, again, SCMEP. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Let's Talk Manufacturing. See you next time.